You know what? That account I was using to connect to AltSpace, it's been locked up. The funny thing was is that whenever I went to look up to get my account back, it said there was another email address associated with that account, including the one that I have. And I thought, oh yeah, somebody's hacked one of my devices. Maybe I don't know, but I may make it back onto AltSpace one of these days. Open up another account. I don't know if it's really worth it because I'll have to think about it. If I get lonely enough, I'll probably open up another account just so I can go to AltSpace. Because AltSpace is a great place to go if you get really lonely and you need to talk to someone. However, something to keep in mind with AltSpace is that nobody there that you meet, most of the people you meet there, you're not ever really going to know in real life. Even if they say you'll know that I know this guy, I met this guy over here, that's fine, but you'll never know them in real life. So, I mean, especially with the lockdown and considering what's happening with airlines and what's happening with all sorts of industries right now, that in the chemical industries, a lot of their factories got filled with wax. Wax is paraffin. It's I think it's probably something that happens to fuel whenever you let it sit around, or some certain stuff when you let it sit around. It turns, maybe it's plastics, because plastics are really close to wax. So it's possible in the plastic plants that they collected a lot of wax on the parts of the machinery, and so they have to go around and clean them up. So a lot of the industry that had been designed not to ever stop has stopped, and now they're experiencing all sorts of delays as a result of all the industry that stopped for COVID. And that's probably the reason why we got guys like Governor Abbott in Texas who's trying to prevent people from using the vaccines and stuff like that, from keeping people from entering businesses. But you know, it's really strange what's happening in the world. You don't know why it's happening. You don't know what the cause of the decisions are. And it's kind of like it's possible that there were layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of schemers and people that had money making schemes going, and they hit the one thing that they were not expecting to find, and that was COVID. And COVID, it ruined one of the biggest schemers, and that was China. The Chinese government, we eventually realized what they were up to, and they were trying to fool the Europeans into thinking that they had like all these Chinese people that were just giving up their organs, but they're actually taking them out of Uyghurs and people that they had captured and put into prisons, and then they were taking organs out of them and sending them to Europe. And Europe thought that all these organs that were coming through were like, from honest donors and stuff. And so the Germans and all of them were revering China. And whenever COVID hit, and China, their whole system of the way that they decide things is that that stability is paramount. So if stability is paramount, what they mean by stability is that anything that rocks the boat, any whistleblowers and stuff like that, we can't have them. We can't have whistleblowers. We are the whistleblower, is basically what it is. And they say if anybody rocks the boat, we're going to throw you in prison. So if anybody protests, you're going to prison. If anybody is a billionaire, you're going to prison, because a billionaire has power, and we don't need somebody else to have more power than us, or even compete in power or develop power. And so basically, they're playing a game of whack the mole, where everybody is a potential competitor for them, even their own people. And that's what happened with China. And what COVID revealed is all of these schemes. So yeah, I'll shut up. So that's the people next door saying you're waking us up with your loud speaking. So um, yeah, I have a loud voice. My mom's like, you know, you got a loud voice. I've had all my life people have been saying to me, your voice is too loud. And, you know, but yeah, I don't know why they bug me now and they don't bug me other times. You know, you probably can't see it, but there is this big old thing over the door there. That's to prevent sound from getting out. So maybe if I hang it this way, because the sound's going to reverberate back that way. If I go up here and sit in my sofa chair, there we go. That's a winning idea right there. So sit in my sofa chair and record. Hopefully the sound that goes this way will go, and then it ends up back in that orifice back there, and very little of it comes out. But if I'm talking directly to this wall, it's going to reflect and hit that, go into that orifice, and probably it's probably that I've got, yeah. What I need is I need to put up a big old cone somewhere and talk into the cone while having the iPad inside of that cone. So if you get a cone and you talk into it, very little of the sound's going to get out. If you talk into the cone rather than out of the cone. So not from the tapered end, but from the other end. Because as the tapered end makes your sound bigger, if you do it from the opposite direction, it makes it smaller. And so this would probably be a way in a recording studio to record your mic if you have people living next door, is to probably put a cone behind the mic and to sing into the cone. And the cone would have to be, it would have to be of a rough material, something that would diffuse the sound such that whenever it comes back it's not going to have as much amplitude, because it will reverberate back. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there that's done this, because my dad did this with light. He did it with to test CCDs out. He would use a black cone, and the light couldn't escape the cone because once it went in, it couldn't come back out. So I would assume that that would also work for sound. And you talk into the cone, and then, I mean, if you're talking into any vessel, it'd probably have the same effect. But one of the guys that replied to my messages recently said Yandex, and I went into his YouTube to see what he was doing, because he recorded video, and I was looking on his desktop, and he had like all this C code having to do with blockchain, and I thought, okay, he's trying to make a lot of money, or he's doing programming for somebody, and then I saw a Tor browser on his desktop, so he's doing stuff that involves cryptocurrency. It's probably the only way people can make money these days, or the best way, if you got clients that are, I mean, if you have clients, it probably is the only way to make money if you've got clients that are in other countries and possibly other governments, and maybe even if you live in a part of the world where you have no privacy, you're going to have to use things like that. I don't use Tor browser. If I had a Tor browser, I would probably try to erase it, because there's a part of me that could use a Tor browser for all sorts of stuff. maybe, and so I don't use Tor browsers. Um, yeah. As I said, I don't know if I'd call myself Christian because it's really up to Christ to determine whether or not I'm Christian. Because I couldn't. I'm not. For one thing, if you call yourself Christian, if you got converted, um, it's going to be extremely rare for you to like be doing by keeping with it, and to the point to where you're just avoiding all sin. And some of us just have bigger problems than those people who can do it right off the bat and just keep going. And I would like to think I'm still on the track, but I have one outstanding transgression, and it's hard to let go of it. And mainly because there's other kinds of anxiety associated with it. And I just figure that it really isn't for me to go the normal route, because I can't imagine, you know, I don't know. I guess I could do it, but um, the chance for me to have done it in the past has passed me by, because I looked at somebody that really worked with, and I could see, well, it happened for him, but when he did it with someone that was um, not attractive, and he wasn't particularly attractive, and he didn't have hardly anything go, and they were in support of each other, I guess, and so maybe they were a mutual surviving organism. They survived off of each other's weaknesses. And I thought, hey, that probably would be a great way of having a marriage, is if the person that you were married to was not particularly attractive, but completed the things that you fail at, and so you could make a list of things you fail at, and then things that you're strong at, and look for one who is stronger in the things that you're weaker, rather than looking for someone that just looks good, or to look for someone who looks good, and if you can get them, then find out what it is that they are weaker at that you're strong at, and you found your way to keep yourself in the relationship, and then try to get both of you into a kind of into a bind. The reason why AMD and Intel are still in business, because Intel has a patent on the Intel 386 design. Okay, the processor design. AMD's using the 386 design, so they would be paying to. They would not be able to. Intel could say, "Well, you can't do that because you're not abiding by our patent of our 386 design." I mean that only we can have the patent. You can't. We haven't licensed it to you. However, AMD has the patent for 64-bit 8086 processors, or 64-bit processors. So if Intel wants a 64-bit processor, they have to get a license from AMD. So they're in a mutual submissive. They're basically married now, and neither one will mess with each other, because one has the Intel patent and the other one has the 64-bit patent. And if Intel wants to make 64-bit processors, they have to see AMD, and if AMD wants to make 64-bit Intel processors, they have to see Intel. But AMD's the stronger one, because AMD can also make their own 64-bit processors, and they can make 64-bit processors with other people. Intel can't make anything but Intel 64-bit processors unless AMD is to make a processor that is that Intel also and has a patent on. So Intel is probably more in submission to AMD than AMD is to Intel, because AMD can go around and make all sorts of 64-bit processors for cell phones and stuff. But everybody pretty much is dependent on Intel. So Intel's kind of thinking their lucky stars that that AMD isn't like, I mean, taking them to the what is it, the laundry, or so at least that's what I was told to me. I don't understand how they can hold a patent for long. How long does a patent last? Maybe 70 years or something like that. I know copyright lasts that long. I don't know what the terms of patents are, how long. But Coca-Cola's had a patented recipe, I guess. It's not copyrighted, it's patented. And if anybody else produces it, then they have to fight with Coca-Cola, because, it's just the way things work, I guess, in America. If the government ever broke down, all that patent infringement crap would break down, and people would then start to have their own security, their own military, and the military would all be like fighting for themselves. Every corporation would be fighting against each other. And that's the reason why you need to have a united state or a government like that, a united government. Is because if all these corporations start having to develop their own security systems, it's crazy. The crazy thing is that the stuff that I'm thinking of is probably going to happen, and I don't like thinking of such things, because I'm feeling like I'm in hell, and if you're in hell, then and it's the case that there's this that I think I'm in a sandbox in hell, and the sandbox is being controlled by a demon, and anything I say or anything I think or any kind of schemes I have, they'll create the counter scheme or whatever. Everything's going to go to pot. That's the fear, and but you hope that it doesn't happen too fast, that it doesn't, you hope that at the end of the whole thing that you don't really end up in hell, but how will you ever know? And how do you have any control over it? How can you have any control over going to hell? How can you have any control over going to heaven? You don't. You just have to get up every day and move on. That's what I do. If I'm not doing it effectively, I'm not doing it effectively. But I can't. I don't have any control over where I end up in the afterlife. And about the only thing that we've got is the Christian thing. I think that's the only thing. And that's if that ain't control, I don't know if anything else could be. But it's really hard to go through life thinking that what other people believe, that we're just some primordial soup that we're evolved, and I've got way too much uh, stuff in my head to say that is true. I mean, I don't believe any of that shit. I don't believe any of the shit that they're saying in the world, in the news and the stuff about science and about evolution and about all this other shit. You know, I don't believe God created evolution. And there is an idea of how something can continue to function in an environment, like organisms in an environment that are filled with contrary organisms, that would develop an evolutionary effect in a sense. Both were created for what they needed to be, but now they end up in an environment where they don't belong. Then it becomes evolutionary. But I mean, that would be the case for things like diseases. You know, that a disease is really just something that is not where it's supposed to be, and in 3D space, um, we can occupy parts of space and not ever come in contact with each other. And when we do come in contact with each other, what happens? Um, it, Whoever's the strongest is going to survive, and that's also kind of like what you see in nature, with animals and things like that. Animals that aren't where they're supposed to be don't survive very well, and so there's some survival of the fittest type things, but but I don't believe that everything was created through what we see in nature, what we see of animals and things. Because for one thing, those animals don't think really. They don't have reasoning skills like we do. Um, though we could identify with an animal as having feeling, they don't create stuff. They don't construct stuff. At best, we've been able to make some apes do a little bit of database work where you could show them an object and show them another object. Maybe they could construct sentences, but they can't like really reason through things enough to teach themselves. They only reason up to the point of getting a treat, and so they may develop an understanding of how different the reason why apes can't reason and why we can reason, to the degree that we do. Um, but the thing is would you really want to go there? Would you really want to develop all of that? Because I'm pointing out that if you take AI and you develop a super AI, whatever it is, a super bot or a singularity, a advanced general, a advanced general intelligence, I guess that's what they call it, an AGI. Um, they're not they. How long did they spend being reared by their parents? A day, a few minutes. They didn't get reared at all. I mean, how much did they develop within a limited perceptive, uh, with a limited perception? You know, what kind of perception were they given? What combined perceptions were they given? Um, do they have a concern for others in the world? Do they have a natural instinct to empathize with other people or with people that it recognizes as being like itself? Uh, I mean, what parents spend most of the time with their children is getting their children to respect them and other children, and to treat people good, treat each other good, because what children do to each other is pretty much terrorize each other. They like to see all the different ways they can terrorize the other. And I never was exposed to this because I didn't. As a result of divorce, I was moved to another place. And so when I look at natural families where there are multiple children and the parents are kind of like trying to do their work or whatever, and the children are constantly playing pranks on each other, um, that's so foreign to me, because I didn't have that. I grew up, even though I have brothers, I grew up kind of as a single child as a result of divorce, and so for a time, I knew what it was like to be in a family, but then I lost that sense of what being in a family was. And the family that I was in was limited to two adults and just me. And so I was forced to have friendships with other children. I'd find other children to hang out with. And my first childhood friend was an American Indian, a Navajo. And my second friend, well, I had other friends in the same area. But I considered that Navajo friend to be more my best friend. Uh, and when I lived in Texas, I didn't. It wasn't a long time until I got to be in high school that I found somebody who I could consider to be kind of a good friend. Okay. And in between, I didn't really know very many people that I could say were good friends because we were just bouncing all over the place. So I might have developed some friendships, but it was really kind of quick, not enough time to like really get to know anybody. And so if I'm going to hell, I'm going to hell as a result of not really knowing anybody. And I would say that that's probably the best thing you could do if you're trying to survive, is to develop deep relationships with people and to get to know people really well, to develop intimacy, because that's what you're going to get in a marriage, is intimacy. And that's the thing I lack, is intimacy. I only have intimacy with my family. When my parents die, who am I going to gain intimacy with? Who could I really trust? Who I don't know. And even in my own family, I don't even know if I can trust people in my own family. I don't know. You know. And so the intimacy would probably have to be with Jesus or God if they're still with me, if they're still concerned about me. And it says in the Bible, it is blessed that they believed, but they didn't see or didn't hear. And so I think that it would be better for me to believe that God is still with me, even if I thought I was going to hell, that Jesus was still with me if I was going to hell. Even if I saw symbols or numbers that made me think I was going to hell, that it would be more blessed for me to believe that I'm going to be saved in any case. It's the only thing I've got. And as long as I have that, then I'm okay. That will keep me grounded, because some nights I'll think it's obvious that I'm fucked, I that's the way I think some nights, and then I'm able to sit long enough to give myself something to eat and some stories to watch to convince myself that this isn't all um, Satan throwing shit in my way, um, that there are people out there that are actually not um, robots for sin, that I'm going to find people that actually are human, that empathize and feel for each other and reason and things like that. And as long as I'm running into people that seem to reason
as long as I can find, as I said with that lady who was living under a bridge, found that one particular bit of beauty,